You know what? I wish I had a time machine. If I had a time machine, I would go back in time and I would change so many things. Like yesterday. Yesterday, I wanted to make a lasagna, but I didn't have all the ingredients, so I didn't make my favorite lasagna. I would have made the lasagna if I had bought all the ingredients. Or last summer. Last summer, I wanted to travel to the USA, but I didn't have enough money to buy a plane ticket. So, because I didn't have the money for a plane ticket, I didn't go to the USA. If I had had the money for a plane ticket, I would have traveled to the USA. Or my little cousin Laura. She had a math exam last week, but that girl didn't study. So when she took her math exam, she didn't pass. If Laura had studied math last week, she would have passed her exam, and she wouldn't have failed. Sadly, I don't have a time machine, so I can't go back in time to change these things. It's impossible, because we can't go back in time and time machines don't exist. But we can talk about these impossible situations using a structure in English called the third conditional. Let me give you some examples of the third conditional. Do you remember what happened to my lasagna? I didn't have the ingredients, so I didn't make the lasagna. If I had bought all the ingredients, I would have made a lasagna. This situation is impossible. I can't go back in time and change the past. So because I didn't buy the ingredients, I didn't make a lasagna. But if I did, the lasagna would have been amazing. We form the third conditional like this. If plus the subject plus the verb in the past perfect form, and then the rest of the if clause. Then there's a comma followed by the results clause. In the results clause, the form is the subject plus would plus the verb in its present perfect form, and then the rest of the sentence. Some of you are probably asking, what's the past perfect? Well, the past perfect is used to express an event in the past that happened before another event. But more importantly, we need to know how to form it when we write sentences or say sentences using the third conditional. The past perfect will always appear in the if clause of a third conditional sentence. In the sentence, if I had bought all the ingredients, the past perfect verb is had bought. The past perfect is always had, which is have in the past, plus the verb in its past participle form. Remember, we also use the past participle verb when we write or say something in the present perfect. The coolest thing about the past perfect is that the verb never changes, even when we change the subject. Let me show you. Imagine that you didn't buy the ingredients for my lasagna, so I could say, if you had bought all the ingredients. Or let's imagine that my friend Tiago didn't buy the ingredients. So I would say, using the past perfect, if Tiago had bought all the ingredients. Or imagine that I am a kid and I still live with my parents. So it's my parents who didn't buy the ingredients for my lasagna. And I could say, if my parents had bought all the ingredients. Remember that I told you last summer I wanted to travel to the USA, but I didn't travel because I didn't have the money to pay for a plane ticket? Well, we can talk about this situation using the third conditional. We can say, I would have traveled to the USA if I had had the money for a plane ticket. Notice in this sentence, we swapped the if and main clauses because conditional sentences are flexible. So now the form is just a little bit different. Here we have the subject plus would plus the verb in its present perfect form. Then, in the second part of the sentence, we have if plus the subject plus the verb in its past perfect form. Notice that the past perfect here is had. Remember that the past perfect is formed by the verb have in the past plus the past participle. In this case, the past participle of the verb have is also had. So that's why it's had. Finally, let's talk about the situation with my cousin Laura. Remember that she didn't study for her math exam, so she failed her exam? Well, we can talk about this situation using the third conditional. If Laura had studied math, she wouldn't have failed her math exam. Remember, the form is the same as all the other third conditional sentences. If plus Laura, the subject, plus the past perfect verb had studied. Then, in the other part of the sentence, it's the subject plus wouldn't plus the verb in its present perfect form. So, in the negative form of the third conditional, instead of would, we use wouldn't. Now you're ready to practice what you learned about the third conditional. You should do exercises 8A, 8B, 8C, and 8D. Good luck!